This is Youth Work, the podcast that delves into the lives of youth workers, their journey and their work with young people.
Anyway, welcome. Joined by Kelly Harris. And we've known each other for quite a while now, haven't we?
We have. I think it must be coming up to, well, it was definitely pre-pandemic, so that's at least 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was with Gavin. It was with the youth of like Funky Dragon days.
Yeah.
With Jade and everyone. So it must be about a decade now.
It must be about a decade.
Yeah, it must be.
Do you know what, though? It's funny because when I say a decade seems like a long time ago. But it's nothing really now, isn't it? But anyway.
The reality and the realization that I'm officially getting older.
Oh, God, don't say that. Anyway, so on that one, Kelly, introduce yourself. You know, who are you? You know, what sort of current role you're doing now? And give us a flavour of who you are.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so Kelly Harris, pronoun she, her. And ultimately, when someone asks me who I am, what I do, I just say I'm a qualified youth worker. Yeah. People still don't fully understand unless you're in the sector.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I say I work with children and young people. And I've been doing that since I was 16, a really, really long time ago. So that makes it, I've just turned 40, so like 24 years. Thank you very much. I'll take it. So into my 24th year of practice, and I've had a variety of jobs within the youth sector. Most recently have been working for Brooke, which is the UK's leading sexual health, wellbeing and relationships charity.
Yeah, well, we'll get on to Brooke a little bit later, but I think it's really good with every guest to sort of rewind all the way back to the start. You can go from birth, you can go from... But like, give us a flavour. So, you know, from like the point where you were at to where, getting into youth. What was your motivations? What was your journey? Talk us through in as much detail as you can, and how you got to where you are now, sitting on this yellow sofa.
Big questions.
It's massive, isn't it?
So I'm going to start with, I am what people might refer to as a forces brat. So my father was Royal Navy. So I was originally born in Portsmouth and then moved around a lot as a kid. So I lived in Scotland, lived in Plymouth and Portsmouth. And so I'd always go to a new school and I'd always be the new girl with a weird accent. I was also a bit chunky, so I was always the chunky weird girl with a weird accent. And then when I was 12, my stepfather is from Port Talbot in South Wales, the glorious town of Port Talbot that I love and adore. We moved back, we moved here, and I've never left basically, and I've never wanted to leave.
Yeah.
So
presumably, so when you're sort of moving around, you move into like naval. Do you see? Oh yeah, Navy bases across the UK.
Yeah. So always kind of grew up on a Navy estate. So therefore I would have like 12 different mums and dads, because kids would just be allowed to like run out and everyone would keep an eye on each other's kids, So it was always that sense of community really. And we moved, as I say, we moved then to Wales when I was 12, and I had a really weird accent by this point because it was a mixture of Scottish. I moved from Scotland when I was 9. And then this Portsmouth twang, which is not Cockney, but it's like a southerner kind of accent mixed in with Scottish, and then moved to Wales. And so it was a unique and interesting time for me. But I feel like then my kind of progression into the youth work side happened just because I was this new girl in school and I went to a comprehensive school. I'd never heard Welsh language in my life. I didn't go to a Welsh medium school. Obviously, Welsh was spoken. It was a different way of life for me. I didn't gel straight away, shall we say.
Yeah.
So,
did that shock you then when you start to hear Welsh bits? You think, what's going on?
A little bit, yes. I could never get my head around it. Things like diolch and shemai, you pick up quite quickly, the nice encompassing words. But like Welsh lessons in school.
Yeah.
Oh, that was definitely, I would say, I feel like did actually maybe stunt my love for the Welsh language. Really? I have a huge love for the Welsh language and respect for it now.
Yeah.
But as a teenager, because I think of the way that possibly it was taught by the teachers that I had, it was very enforced, but equally I wasn't very good. And so, the discipline, I guess, around it, I found a bit disempowering. Yeah. I know it's changed. I've got friends who are Welsh teachers now and they're phenomenal Welsh teachers. But my Welsh teachers were scary and not particularly, welcoming, I guess, maybe to an extent. So, but when I moved then to this particular school, as I said, I just didn't settle in very well. I became really unhappy. I ended up being bullied. All of the kind of like cliche things that we kind of say about young people and things, but we're talking, this was 1997, so a really long time ago. Mental health wasn't really paid much attention. There was never really any conversations around it. And also I was quite private about it, but I got to a position where I was deeply, deeply unhappy and I was causing some harm to myself. And youth work then kind of entered my life. So as part of it, I moved schools. I moved to a different comprehensive school in Port Talbot, which was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Is that because of the bullying?
Because of the bullying, yeah, because I wasn't settled. I was deeply unhappy. The bullies were there. The schools weren't dealing with it. And I mean, this is before we had anti-bullying policies in schools, and teachers trained in these areas. But between moving schools and the youth service, I genuinely credit it with saving my life, really. Yeah. And I found something within myself because the youth service then approached the school I moved to. Looking for some young people to take part in a summer project.
Okay.
And I've always loved writing and reading, a bit of that kind of cliche side of it. And they were looking for people who were inspired to become the next journalists of the world.
Right, okay.
And at the age of 14, I thought, I am going to be like an amazing journalist or wherever that was going to take me. So I got involved in this kind of media project, and it was run by Neath Talbot Youth Service.
Yeah.
And it was transformational. It changed my life, and I absolutely adored it.
So you mentioned earlier, you were, about your mental health, you were quite private about it.
Yeah.
So asking you to go back quite a bit, why do you think you were private about it? And
I think because I didn't maybe understand what was going on. I know for myself. So, and again, just a warning to anyone who's listening to it, this is kind of talking about suicidal ideation, is I was harming myself. I didn't want to be alive. I didn't want to kind of exist. And I didn't want people to know. I didn't want my parents to know. And I would kind of do things to harm myself or to hopefully end my life. And I would hope that I wouldn't wake up in the morning, write like letters and things like that. And so I wouldn't ever tell them about it. But my parents couldn't understand my behavior because of the way I was reacting to certain things, and they were really struggling because they know a teenager's a teenager. Is it hormones? What is it about growing up? So I really, really hid it because also I didn't want to hurt them. I really didn't want to hurt them, not fully understanding that what I was doing would eventually cause them harm.
And do you think that's because if you back in the sort of early 20s and late 90s, it just wasn't talked about.
Yeah.
Parents wouldn't talk. Young people traditionally just didn't either.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Head into it.
Yeah, and I think if somebody kind of, and again, the time of my life was kind of like around 1997 to 1998. If someone was on antidepressants back then, it was seen to be quite stigmatizing, so there was still a lot of stigma. And I'm so glad that we've moved forward so much in the last kind of 20, 30 years to be where we are as a society. We're still not perfect. We've still got a long way to go. But CAMHS didn't really exist back when I was going through this. So I ended up having to go into hospital. I had harmed myself enough that I needed some medical intervention. And the support that I was provided was a vicar at a local church came to visit me. So again, not to say that that's a bad thing. I'm not somebody who is religious. But again, the services, I was also then provided with 6 counselling sessions.
A whole 6?
A whole 6 of them. And so, so again, very interesting. But it was a thing then I had to go back to school. People knew what had happened. So the school were unprepared for knowing how to deal with it. And then I'd have young, teenagers, my peers kind of coming up to me and asking me really personal questions. And you just felt a little bit like a kind of freak show almost. So, but as I say, times have changed now. We do have better services. The only challenge is now is that there's such waiting lists for these services that unfortunately we know are failing young people. But there are tremendous services out there like Platform and Mind Cymru, all of these services who are doing such great work to support vulnerable young people when they need it.
Invaluable as well, and they just if you think if they've evolved as organizations throughout for a number of years now, and hopefully resource does become a bit of a thing, because I think what's happening is that now when more people are talking about it, more people are accessing those services, but so much so they just can't keep up with demand, and it's not their fault.
It's not.
It's a hot, yeah.
It's a horrible situation. It's also a postcode lottery. I think it depends on where you live. So I still live in Port Talbot. I absolutely adore the town I live in. And yeah, the youth service provide great, they do as much as they can do, and the charity sector, we're so heavily reliant on them, but there's a real lack of funding. There's a real lack of resource, which feeds into so many issues in kind of modern day youth work.
Yeah.
But again, we've got, as more people are understanding mental health and the effects that it has on people, we talk about ACEs now, we talk about being trauma informed. Brilliant. It's good to have the vocabulary, the understanding, the hard work of like academics and professionals in the field. But the thing that we're still missing is money and resource to be able to deal with the growing demand of it and the pressures. And for me being a teenager back then, I didn't have a mobile phone.
No.
So I can't imagine what my journey through that bullying experience could quite possibly have been if I'd had digital technology. It could have been positive. I could have found a community to help me, support me. But equally, it could have been even more damaging because I would have been contactable 24 hours. I never would have been able to escape my bullies. When I just barricaded down in my house and didn't go anywhere, I was kind of left alone, So the technology has changed. And so therefore, the demand and the resource needed to provide for young people today has changed and, is needed much, much more.
Yeah. So you move schools.
Yep.
That was a positive step.
It was.
And when you come into your new school, did you feel like a new person, starting a new beginner? How was that sort of for you?
I was very timid. And so when people meet me and I describe myself as someone who was shy, everyone goes, "What? You? You're like the most extroverted extrovert there ever existed." But no, I was really shy and timid, and I was really scared because again, my accent was still weird. I was still this bizarre girl, and also the school I moved to wasn't too far away from the previous school, so therefore I was still part of that community, and I was really scared that all of my peers would find out what had happened. And so I didn't tell anyone. I hid all of that for many, many, many years. However, I always remember there was a teacher called Mr. Tucker. He was head of year 9, and that was the year group I was going into.
Yeah.
And Mr. Tucker was a bit like Marmite. You either loved him or you hated it. He's the drama teacher.
Love drama.
And I loved Mr. Tucker. But again, there would be some people who would have very different opinions to me. However, my first day, me and my mum were sat in the head teacher's office, and Mr. Tucker was with us as well. And my mum was obviously explaining, and Kelly's quite anxious. And I always remember he just looked at me and he said, "I've got you."
Oh,
and it's just, and he did. He had me in a very professional way. I left school, but he got me involved in drama. So he put me in the chorus of Bugsy Malone in year 9.
Love it.
And I found the community that way, and I loved doing drama. I did it as a GCSE, and I actually became, this is very boastful now, but pay it well.
Go for it.
I became Mr. Tucker's very first A-star student at GCSE level.
Oh, in GCSE drama.
Yeah, in his whole history. And he taught Michael Sheen, so just to say, Michael Sheen was a big, he was a big legend, Glenavon. So we had a big poster of him from his Shakespeare days, signed personal to Mr. Tucker.
That's brilliant.
And Mr. Tucker even featured in, Michael Sheen did a documentary with Joanne Lumley where they just drove around Port Talbot. Yeah. And Mr. Tucker even got a cameo in that. Yeah. So he was a bit of a legend in the community, But he was good to me. And and then in year 10 and year 11, I did the plays at school, and I was never on stage. I found that I loved being behind the stage, which I've kind of found as, and then the way that I guess I work as a professional, I prefer to be behind the scenes supporting young people instead of kind of being the one on the stage. And
I suppose everyone's got a role though, haven't they?
This is it. And I loved it. And then, and it was just, brilliant times. And so I found myself in that school. I, got a best friend and, and I found friendships. And I think the thing that I was really good at doing was navigating different friendship circles. I was never one to be like, right, okay, well, this is a clique here, this is a clique there, I never had that at that school. And so still to this day now, as a 40-year-old, I'm still really good friends with lots of my friends.
Really? That's really good.
And I also married a boy from my year group.
Wow, really?
Yeah, yes. We were in childhood sweethearts. We didn't actually start romantically dating until we were 22 after university and all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were in school together. We did plays together. But there was just a sense of community there, and I absolutely adored. So I look back on those year 9 to year 11 times with real fondness, beyond like the usual school and all of that stuff.
Of course, yeah.
But no, I look back with fondness. And then, as I said, in year 9, I got introduced to the youth service at Neath Talbot.
Wow. And year 9's like a critical age, isn't it?
It was.
It's such a critical age.
Yeah.
Normally when people move comprehensive schools, it's normally like, they're early on, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So obviously you're going through like your crucial years of development, but it was a positive step change for you.
It was.
And then the youth service were there. So, how did you get involved? So I knew you said there was a summer project.
There was
and then
a summer
you
project.
immersed yourself in there. Was there anything did you sort of like stay with them, or how was that? What was the hook really that drawed you right into them?
So yes, it did start off. It was supposed to just be a like 1 week project initially, but it kind of the group of us who got involved in this, there was about 12 of us across my year group. And we all got on really well together. So this one project where we were just writing articles, and we were supposed to kind of like make like a little newspaper type thing. We were all budding journos, and some of sport, different things, music reviews, all these different things. And and we just loved it. We wanted to keep it going. And they were like, well, we don't have any funding. So to kind of put it into context, this was 1999. Okay. Youth services are still quite small, they're not very well funded.
No.
Maybe there's a bit of irony that they're still the same today, in my opinion. But youth services generally are a little bit bigger than they were back then. And there was 2 youth workers, Alison and Rian, and they ran the project, and they could just see how much we loved it.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, if you don't want to give it up, we don't want to give it up either. We want to keep this going.
Youth workers.
Exactly. And so, but then they were like, right, well, if you want to commit to this, we're going to have to do this outside of school time. So we all agreed that we would give up our Saturday mornings, We met at the local library in Port Talbot. It was brand new at the time, and we were all like,
wow,
look at all those computers,
Big
chunky computers. But the library were amazing. And we kept it going. And we actually then applied to the Prince's Trust for some funding. And we worked in partnership with the Evening Post Courier at the time.
Okay.
Courier, I think it was the Courier. They don't exist anymore, unfortunately.
Okay.
But their printing company, housing in Swansea, with the building where they did everything, they kind of hosted us. We got a bit of a partnership agreement. If you can get the funding, this is how much it would cost. 4 copies of your newspaper. We called ourselves, get ready for the originality here.
Love it.
We called ourselves Teen Voice. Because we were teenagers wanting to have a voice.
That is super empowering.
So cliche and cringy. But that's what we called ourselves. And again, this was pre-internet, okay? I mean, so it was still, print was still the way to communicate. So there was no digital element to this. But the Prince's Trust took a leap of faith, and they gave us £13,000. And that funded us. Back then, it was a lot of money. We all went out for a big fancy Chinese as well. I remember that, like, as a reward for all our hard work. The youth service paid for it.
Oh, I love that.
In a on a minibus on the way there, we were all loving it, like living our glam life, putting our best. Yeah, we did. We honestly, it was a time. It was a time. And so we did. We committed to then creating this newspaper, and funding obviously ran out eventually, as it always does. And also a little bit of interest waned. We were getting close to kind of like, it was about 2 years that we were involved in this together. And there was different personalities in the project, and for me, I just adored kind of the principle of going to I hang out with friends and do fun things. And so when I was part of it, because again, we are talking youth councils and youth forums weren't even kind of anything really back then. So as this group, were established, Neath Talbot Council were thinking about the idea of setting up some kind of like youth council. And I remember going along to a session with other young people from across the authority, like maybe being in like the youth clubs and different places. And somebody running a session for us from Dynamics, who were like I don't know how to describe Dynamics. For those who know, but they were very hands-on, engagement-based, activity-based organisation.
Like a youth work organisation?
Yeah, youth work organisation, charity sector, and they would do great facilitation, basically, but really fun, engaging, hands-on, participatory methodology stuff. And they came and facilitated it. And it was just like, if you were to have your say in East Talbot, how would you want to have your say?
Yeah.
And so things really evolved from there. And of course, because, I loved all of this, I put my hand up straight away to be on the first ever youth council in East Talbot. Again, 1999. So it's such a long time ago. I feel like really old reflecting, but it's lovely. And this was back in the era of young people partnerships, so I used to go and sit on there as a young person. I will say, never thought that was a great experience. It was very tokenistic. It was very much like, Kelly's here as a young person, sit there, be quiet.
Yeah.
No clue what was going on, no involvement really. But, for the council, it was
great for them.
It was great
Yeah,
for them.
yeah.
It was very much the beginning days of being involved. But then through that, I started to volunteer in a youth club in Port Talbot as well. Really loved it. I did my senior membership training, which would allow me to then kind of like be a senior volunteer or whatever, in the youth club. And then alongside it, I also did my Duke of Edinburgh Award, my bronze, And as part of it, you have to do like your community element.
Yeah.
So I was a bit like, what am I going to do for my hours? So through the youth service and through one of the youth workers, they got me in at a place called SNAC, which stands for the Special Needs Activity Centre.
Oh, right.
And it was a charity-based thing where mums had united together, and fathers, I should say, but it was predominantly mums. Where they would come together on a Saturday afternoon for 2 hours, use one of the youth services community buildings, and basically provide a safe space for young people from the age of 0 to 18 who had really different disabilities. So some of them could have mild autism, some of it could be severe, some people could be in wheelchairs, some people have visual impairments. It was a real mixed bag of individuals, and I started to volunteer there for the 2 hours on a Saturday. And I loved it.
Oh, wow.
It was the best. I couldn't leave after when I did my hours. I stayed volunteering.
Yeah.
And then in the end, they gave me a 2-hour Saturday job, and I got paid £4.25 an hour. I honestly felt like I was a millionaire. I was like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Worked with a great bunch of people. And then they actually secured a huge piece of funding from through the steelworks at the time in Port Talbot.
Oh, yeah.
And they opened up a massive, chorus. Yeah, they opened up a massive, beautiful, and it's still there today, kind of like bespoke building.
Wow.
And so,
Nice.
it was fantastic. And so, my hours obviously increased because the building we ran we had sessions every evening, on the weekends. I just absolutely adored my time there. So we'd have like different rooms, multi-sensory room, you'd have like the main ball pit area, although I will say there was frequently urine or sick related issues in that ball pit. So I think I spent most of my time having to deep clean and clean that out. Which wasn't always fun.
No.
Well, never fun.
No, it's never fun doing that. Yeah, no one likes that job.
Exactly. Or you're outside on the go-karts in the freezing cold. But I loved it. And the people I worked with, and just the family and the sense of community. And it was through them that I went to Clongrannog for the very first time. So, So I was doing all of this stuff, and then also was still doing the youth council work as well.
Yeah.
So, and then from that youth council side of things, Funky Dragon came into my life.
Really?
So for anyone who doesn't know what Funky Dragon is, it was the Children and Young People's Assembly for Wales.
Yeah.
And it used to be called Llais Ifanc, Young Voice, way there when. And this, again, we're talking early stages of youth voice on a national level in Wales. So, and that's kind of where my Funky Dragons story kind of started as well.
So that's
a lot, sorry.
I was a member of Funky Dragon as well. So I've got...
Our past must have.
Must have
Definitely.
So I think I was a member, must be around 2003, 2004.
Yeah, you definitely would have. That's when I started to... 1,000%. I can't remember you, sorry, Dad. There was lots of you. There were 60 of you, but... Yeah, that's
I
crazy.
remember there was a person that was more senior than me. He's obviously a bit older than me, and he's from Newport. You know Steve, right?
Stephen, yeah, like Steve, I know Stephen. Yeah,
Yeah, so he was the one that sort of helped me, like not helped me, but he was like a older young person that you obviously aspired. So I sort of followed a little bit.
Love Stephen. Got a funny story about Stephen. I don't know if you want me to share, but it's very entertaining. Stephen is fantastic and had lots of good times with Stephen. But I was then a worker at Funky Dragon at this time, although I would kind of jump in here.
Yeah.
But I'll always remember where I was when I'm going to forget the Pope's name now. John Francis. A few years ago, a long time ago. Two popes ago, we're on to a new pope now. But
that's right.
anyway, so we were on a residential with Funky Dragon. We were staying in Pembrokeshire, and there used to be the Crystal Maze activity.
Right. Yeah, didn't they?
So we all went there like for an evening activity. And at the end of the evening, the activity centre agreed that all of us could get inside of the glass dome. Okay, so we're talking now like 50 young people crammed inside of this tiny dome. So we all had a button. Some of us were crouched down on the floor. It was very much, I don't think we would do it today. Personal space, we've definitely been invaded. But we all had a button, and the idea was we kept pressing it to see if we could smash the record for the amount of it. Very, very silly thing to do. So we're all in there. It's really hot, really warm. I'm crouched down on the floor, and all of a sudden Stephen comes in and says, "Everyone, I've got some really sad news to tell you. Very, very serious." And we were all like, "Oh my gosh."
Just saying that.
Yeah.
Well.
And we were like, "Oh my gosh." And he said, "I have to tell you all the sad news that the Pope has died." In that moment, everybody burst out laughing. It was the most inappropriate thing that we all did. But it was because we did not know what to expect. And obviously, he was deeply upset. And we were upset. And obviously, it was a very, very sad moment. But I will never forget where I was, because everyone was like, what is this surreal world? That's the only way I can describe youth work. Because one minute you can be in a glass dome with 50 young people, the Pope has died. And the next minute you can be in a really serious meeting, having to do something. So, but yeah, Stephen always holds them whenever I see them. Yeah, they're fantastic.
It's like, it's not funny the Pope has died. Situation and how you're in a glass dome and things like that. I can imagine
the epitome of youth work to be like, you never know what young people are going to come out with or say, or how they're going to react to life events and things. But yeah, it was definitely a memorable moment.
Yeah, you're either laughing or crying sometimes.
It was a mixture of both, I think, that day. So yeah.
Oh, so that was like your sort of initiation into youth work, and you sort of like went from young person, you sort of transitioned to volunteer, paid employment.
Yeah.
So that's like, so that, you know, would you say you were sort of hooked on it then? That was your career path. I'm going to go down this and pursue this.
I adored it. So again, it was through Neath Toba Youth Service. So I was getting involved in more and more different things.
Yeah.
So again, the youth council, so they started to pay me as like a young, well, I don't want to say young person. It was, I guess, a part-time worker to go out and do some delivery and also help facilitate the youth council meeting. So I was like, this is it for me.
Yeah.
And the youth service at the time, again, it wasn't poorly run, it wasn't anything like that. It was still quite new in it.
Yeah, of course.
It was like the first cohort of youth workers who were going to do their youth and community degree as well. So I was a bit like, oh, well, I want to do that because I was of that age. So, I was kind of between coming up to 18. I was doing my A-levels, but I generally wasn't. I was more part-time because I was working for the youth service so much.
Yeah.
I was loving earning money. I mean, in one of the positions, because I also did some stuff through Public Health Wales, I did a smoking cessation project, and I also did RADS, which is the Relationship Advice Drop-In Survey. It sparked my interest, love, dedication around sexual health. Yeah. And I used to get paid £16 an hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's because even this, yeah.
Yeah. I was 17 earning this kind of money. Obviously, you would do 2 hours a week. It wasn't that it was a full-time job, but I was loving earning money. I kind of passed my driving test really quickly so I could get a car, so I could go and work in more youth clubs.
Yeah.
I was definitely finding myself committed.
Did you feel like, oh my God, I'm getting paid to do this?
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, definitely. So there's one project I then got involved in. It was funded through the youth service, and I forget the other name of it. These are the problems when it was such a long time ago. Basically, it was through the youth justice system. Right. So they would pay, I forget the name of the project.
PPYP, was it?
I think that was specifically, but basically we went and worked in a youth club that had very, very challenging communities that went there. And stats were showing that young people who lived in this particular community were a higher percentage of potential potentially committing a crime. So they were doing a lot of intervention work through it. So there's an amazing youth provision in Sandfields in Port Talbot, and for the life of me, I'll come to me later what the But yeah, so they were doing some great stuff, and I got asked whether or not I'd be interested in being part of a summer project with them. And so they ran a 6-week project, which is basically every day of the week they would have a different activity going on for the young people in that community.
Really
Yeah, it was amazing. And so it could be things like going fishing, it could be doing team building exercises, it could be going to Oakwood, even if it's not there anymore. But it, all of these things, and I started there and I got paid, youth worker hours to do it, loved it. And then the year I was 18, I got asked to manage the project for the summer. Yeah, really good. It was. Yeah. It was also a very interesting life experience. Yeah. We sometimes as youth workers talk about supporting young people. Yeah. But when there's then a different power, it's a very different experience. And, some of that was quite a negative experience at the time from the way I was treated by other youth workers. Who didn't like the fact that a young 18-year-old who was maybe less experienced or, was given this opportunity, shall we say. Yeah, of course. But also very good learning on how to deal with challenging members of staff and things like that. But that summer, I would work really hard to make that summer project a massive success. However, we would take young people to London to see a West End show for the day. Yeah. So I would just get to sit on a coach, go to London, see a show and come back and sit on a coach, play a game of bingo or some kind of fun activities on the coach. Yeah. And I get paid to do it. I know. So that's the thing, that's for me. But I loved building the rapport with young people, and I knew the difference that this youth work could made to my latter teenage years. Yeah. And I could see the difference that youth work was making to these young people. And yeah, it was just an addiction and I loved it.
I suppose you really understand the value then, don't you? If you've been through it, you sort of feel like obligated almost to sort of do the same what they've done to you almost, or even better sometimes, isn't it?
It sparked it. And so I say to this day, so Alison Simonson in East Patala, she doesn't work for the youth service anymore, but she was one of my first youth workers. Yeah. And I've got nothing but love and gratitude for Alison. And also another youth worker called Janet Weaver, who actually works for the Temple Time Credits now.
I think.
Pardon? Yeah, you probably do. So Janet Weaver was, she ran the youth council. She was a youth council worker. And Janet is hilarious. Really? She is, in the nicest way in the world, crazy, scatty, love it, hardworking, passionate, dedicated. And she loves the young people she works for. And she's dedicated. She sees the value of youth work. She's still in my life now. And yeah, without these youth workers, and there's been others, but those two especially, they hold a really dear heart around it. Because the other side around it, Darryl, this is a jumping all over the place. Oh. I have my finger in so many different pies. So and the youth service gave me all of these things. And so one of my best friends from school, Craig Williams, he was such a radio nerd. Yeah. He adored broadcasting. It was his hobby. Yeah, he knew everything. He did his work experience at The Wave, which was a radio station in kind of Swansea area. He was a radio nerd. And he wanted to set up his own community radio station. And I remember us talking because he was part of the youth council as well. And I remember him talking to Janet about it. And she's like, well, let's do it. And we were like, what? So before we knew it, we had applied. And
response, let's just do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is why I'm still the way I am. Let's just do it. Let's see, if you don't try, you don't get.
100%.
Before you knew it, we'd filled out a license for a community radio station. Craig's nerdy connections had somehow managed to find us people in the industry. Wow. And the next thing you know, we've got a porter cabin in the Aberavon Quins rugby grounds in Port Talbot for a weekend, and we did a trial 48 hours community radio station called Avon FM.
I love it.
And yes, it was hilarious. There was one incident where Craig got locked in and I had to feed him chicken nuggets through a fence because we couldn't get him out because he didn't know how to get hold of the groundskeeper to get him out of the building. But all of this was mobilized through Janet's perseverance, and it wasn't always sunshine and rainbows. It was hard work. It was Janet's belief in the project, a belief in the importance of it. Seniority, I guess, maybe didn't always necessarily agree with what was happening or the way, because we were young people. We didn't want to play ball the way that they wanted young people. And again, this was still the early phase of young people having a voice. Yeah. Craig was also very temperamental, and he wouldn't mind me saying that. He had a good temper on him. So when things didn't go his way, he didn't like it. So he had various crosswords with, like either the council leader or someone who's a head of a department somewhere, Yeah, well, we had to make friends as well, But the trial went really well, and the premise around it was that we would be a community radio station that would train young people up in broadcasting, and that was something that we really were passionate about. And this is when we actually brought back Teen Voice, and so my role there would be I would run a broadcasting youth magazine online. Where we would train young people up to become, DJs and practice and create content about like links and all of these things and community focused. And it took years and years and years, but eventually after doing various different trial stints in the community in various buildings, wheeling and dealing with people who would be willing to let young people who were a bit clueless kind of do this kind of crazy thing. We got funding from Welsh Government and through definitely. And through the National Lottery, and we actually built state-of-the-art radio station studios as part of Neath Talbot's Avon Lido, which was like a swimming pool kind of sports hall place. And it was fantastic until the Lido burnt down.
I remember that.
Yeah. Our equipment didn't burn, but there was a lot of damage and getting things out. So that really was the start of the demise of Avon FM. And also we learned a lot of really hard lessons along the way. We didn't run things properly. We were young people. We did have adult support, but again, adults were giving us their support like voluntarily.
Yeah.
And so that was amazing. And I still look back on that time of my life with massive pride to be like, we were so crazy, but it was the youth workers that enabled us. They believed in us. And that's what I always wanted to kind of replicate in my career.
I suppose on the surface, it looks as if you're all having a great time. The youth workers are having sometimes I used to have the same, especially from my parents, almost like having a jolly, but they wouldn't see all that tenacity and hard work you had to do. Yeah. Like you said, the wheeling and dealing and just the general rigor of everything. Yeah. Otherwise that wouldn't have happened really, would it?
Exactly. And for me, I had too many spinning plates. So I definitely, as well as this time I was part of Funky Dragon, as I mentioned, I became a young person on Funky Dragon representing Neath Talbot. And then in early 2004, so I was 19, I got a paid employment opportunity with them. So I didn't go to university traditionally. I did try to, and I should explain, I didn't apply to go to university like all my friends were doing when we were doing our A-levels. I was working. I had all my fingers and pies. I was doing all this amazing stuff for the youth service. And I was like, well, I'm just going to stick with this and get a proper job. And then on A-level results day, all my friends were thrilled. They were all off to their different universities. And I just went into panic mode. What am I going to do? Maybe this isn't a secure thing. And so I panic applied to Swansea University to study sociology through clearing. Yeah. I remember ringing my parents at 4:00 in the afternoon going, you know how I said I didn't want to go to university and you bought a house? FYI, in September, I started at Swansea University and my course is going to cost this much. Is that okay? Needless to say, my parents weren't thrilled with me, but also not thrilled because a year and a half into my sociology degree, I dropped out because I was working full time at Funky Dragon. And I was like, this is my passion. This is what I love. And I was employed as a modern apprenticeship mentor. Oh my goodness. Where I looked after 10, 16 and 17-year-olds to get them through their qualification and business level 2 or 3, I can't remember. And basically help them into the working world whilst then working. And this is through the European Social Funding, those glorious ESF days. Funded me for 10 whole years of my employment at Funky. But obviously then we were supporting Funky's a kind of wider mission, which was around youth voice representation at a national level. And had the best 10 years working for an organisation that I believed in, I loved. Worked with people who became like family because I had such a we did not have a high staff turnover because we all loved the job. We got to do the best job. And had very, very special memories, but I just did too much. So I was working full time, had 3 part-time jobs. I was then, once I dropped out of that degree, I then finally took the plunge and went to do my youth and community work degree.
Shout out.
Newport University, shout out, back in the days. Now I'm not there, but obviously it's University of South Wales.
That's right.
And I did my degree then part-time whilst working at Funky. And but I learned a lot of valuable lessons, you know, that youth voice mattered. That's the thing that kept me engaged. I got other opportunities. I got to go on a youth exchange to Germany.
Right.
I took part in a humanitarian aid trip to Belarus, where we travelled by minibus from Sandfields and Putol, but to Belarus, to a town called Gomel, where we took medical aid and various kind of stuff. That was definitely a whole other podcast in itself, an experience. And we took young people who were in the youth justice system as well. And so it was an interesting 14 days of camping and poor sanitation. That opened my eyes to the world. The orphanage we stayed at didn't have running water. They had a well. Horse and carriage was still the main form of transportation out there. They thought we were celebrities in our minibuses. And I think I was 17 or was I 18 when I went? I must have been 18. But it was an amazing eye-opener for me to realise that this little town that I'm part of, there's a whole bigger world out there, and not everyone has clean water. Not everyone has access to these things that, you know, we do. We might complain about, but it was a bit of a good reality perspective. So
that's where like relative poverty meets actual poverty then.
1000%. And I grew up poor. I didn't come from a wealthy background. My mum has a disability. So even though I didn't have the words for these things, I was definitely a young carer, but I would never have known I was a young carer because, again, the language wasn't there and the support wasn't there. So again, lots of millions of different things, but I just loved it. But this is what youth work gave me. It gave me the opportunity to participate and for people to go, oh, do you want to do this? Or are you interested in that? And for me, my skills just grew and grew, you know. It was, amazing. But I always knew this is the job that I know I want to do.
Did you feel like, you know, you were saying earlier in your earlier sort of opening that if almost like a community, did you feel like the youth work sort of sector is almost like a community because we all seem to support each other? We all want each other to do the best things and be the best person and do what's right for young people. Is that how you felt? Or?
Yes and no. So I think, yes. Overall, there are such amazing people out there doing amazing work. And so, for sure. However, I would say that going from being a young person who was involved in lots of things to then becoming a worker, I saw a different side of some youth workers, and some of them didn't treat me the best. You know, some of them weren't. They were a bit. I wouldn't say like cruel, but they just weren't very nice. You know, so I learned a lot, and I got burnt a lot. I think kind of like around the age of 17, 18, 19, and I felt really disillusioned to be like, hold on, but when I was a young person, so. I kind of analogize, like in 2001, they used to do like an award ceremony, a bit like the Youth Work Excellence in like a smaller version in East Ptolba. And I remember in 2001, I won Youth Achiever of the Year, you know, because I was involved in so many things and I was recognised and nominated and I was thrilled. So went up on stage, got presented a nice award by the local council, the leader. And, you know, my mum was in the audience, all very proud, etc., etc. The following year, I was there then as a worker supporting young people, and, you know, the attitude of some workers. And I think it was emblematic of the time. And the fact that youth work was still finding itself as a professionalism, you know. Because now I would definitely say my relationships with different youth sectors is fantastic and the values there. So I don't know if I can say my experience is what today's experience would be. Because now I look back on it and I'm like, no, the youth sector is just tremendous. But I did always think to myself, after that experience, I don't know if I would want to work again in a statutory youth service. However, I will say, and I've got to give a massive shout out to Torvine Youth Service here, is, again, as an adult, lots of fingers in different pies. I'm also an assessor for the Youth Work Quality Mark. And so we go out and we look at different youth provisions and kind of determine if we think that they meet a certain standard of youth work. And I went out and I was part of the assessment team at Torvine Youth Service, and it was tremendous. It was amazing. And I loved it. And I left that week going, gosh, I would go and work for them in a heartbeat.
Because of the culture.
It was the culture. So what David and the team are doing there, the culture, the environment, the supportiveness. And I will say that having the privilege that I've had now to go out and do other assessments of youth services. So I've been part of one that looked at Pembrokeshire Youth Service.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Absolutely amazing.
I don't know that one, were you?
Yeah, it was. We were on that one together. Yeah, we were. Amazing. The community, the staff, the support, So, and seeing that, and also, doing assessments of the charity sector, the voluntary sector, phenomenal as well. And I think a lot of it is because over time youth work has evolved, it has changed, the sector's changed, there's better understanding of what youth work is. We've professionalized it through, kind of like degrees and training and all of those things. So so my experience was a bit of a hodgepodge, shall we say.
Yeah.
Good life lesson and good things to learn. And
like I said, it transitioned, isn't it? And I think,
it has.
I think I had to go through that process for, I think the way I always interpret sort of my sort of transition from young person to worker is that I wanted to be the youth workers, and you'd hope that they were that true valid self. So rather than sound as if in your case, that probably wasn't the case in that.
Yeah, exactly. And I say there were some tremendous youth workers who are still working in the Topic Youth Service and doing an outstanding job. People like Corin Fry, Corin trained me up in all things sexual health. Jason Heaney, who's the youth service manager. Jason was the youth worker that took me to Germany on the youth exchange. He was amazing. So there were lots of really good personalities there.
Yeah. Oh, fab. So that I'm struggling to work out your timeline, because that was a lot of stuff in probably a small amount.
It was a short space of time.
That sounds like almost one person's whole career, but you still evolved from that point onwards, isn't it? So you went from there then, and where was your sort of like next big leap then?
Funky Dragon was the main one. So I was at Funky Dragon then for 10 years. So proud of my time there, supporting young people to have a national voice within, at the time, the National Assembly for Wales, or the Welsh Assembly government, even before then.
Right, yeah.
So all of these different kind of the devolution of like politics in Wales and our political institutions. Funky Dragon kind of founded its way through that, and Rhodri Morgan, Jane Davidson and Jane Hutt were the first kind of, at the time, Assembly members to really back Funky Dragon and give it a platform and see the value in children's rights and participation.
Yeah.
And so, we then obviously in 2008 supported young people to become young researchers, which drew a lot of scrutiny. But we were the first, I don't know if I can make the claim actually the first in the world, but we were definitely the first in the UK where young people undertook their own research into the state of children's rights in Wales.
Good.
And submitted it then to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child committee, the report, and actually submitted it as part of the state kind of observation that happened every 5 years.
Yeah.
And so, and called Our Rights, Our Story. And then there was a children's version called Why Do People's Ages Go Up, Not Down? Which was actually a question that a child posed in one of the workshops, which everybody just thought, that is a good question. I don't know what the answer is. That's the thing. So and so we did that. So supporting young people really, and Funky Dragon became very much that children's rights mechanism of what I would call the heyday of children's rights participation, youth work in Wales. But then unfortunately, Welsh Government changed its funding, and Funky Dragon had to close down in 2014. So that journey kind of came to an end there, and it was deeply sad. It really was. It was a unique experience because it was the whole organisation closing. We had really empowered young people who were really devastated. There was a petition, and so Funky Dragon did end, but my journey then took me. It just happened to be a bit of fate. Around the time of the Funky Dragon redundancy situation, the Senedd, as we now know it, at the time the National Assembly for Wales, were advertising for a youth engagement officer.
Okay.
So this was somebody that they wanted to come in and develop and build their youth engagement provision for young people in youth democracy. They always engaged with schools, and they had kind of teachers who would do that both at the Senedd building itself and then also out in the community in schools. But they didn't really have somebody whose job it was to work with youth organisations. And so I thought it seemed like a great job. I'm also out of a job, so I better give it a go. And for me, thankfully, I was the lucky person that got the job. And I then spent the next 5 years of my professional career working for the Senedd, one of the greatest honours of my life.
Yeah.
One of the most fun and challenging times, but one of the things that I think I am immensely proud of. And whilst I was there, obviously it was building a new youth engagement service. So really the activities, how we go out and work with like youth councils, but also things like scouts, how we work with, we did a huge amount of work with Girl Guides. We created a youth democracy badge with them at the time. So just how we go out and spread the word about what's the difference between the Welsh Government and at the time the National Assembly for Wales, now known as the Senedd, Senedd Cymru or Welsh Parliament. So people could understand what actually through the powers of devolution that we could make decisions over. So like the environment, education, health, which people didn't really understand. They still thought all of these decisions were made by the UK government. I think the pandemic, as unfortunate as it was probably one of the biggest publicity campaigns to understand that Wales actually has devolved and made its own decisions, because we obviously had different health guidelines on various parts of the pandemic. Exactly. So, and so it was about how we get young people involved. And the big thing for me when I worked at the Senedd was everyone was talking about votes at 16. I've always been a massive advocate for votes at 16. Funky Dragon, we did a lot when it was a private members bill with Julie Morgan when she was a member of parliament. It didn't pass, unfortunately, but I'm a big supporter of it. And I believe that 16-year-olds are mature enough and able enough to make decisions to participate in our democratic structures. And so the thing, though, that used to irk me was you'd have lots of adults talking about votes at 16 and saying, oh, young people aren't smart enough, or young people don't want it. My thing was, we'd never asked young people if they'd wanted it in Wales. There'd never been a big national consultation. So that was really the big project that I was part of and driving.
It's also a huge assumption on their behalf.
Massive. Let's understand, if young people don't want to vote, why not? What is it? So we went about doing this consultation. This was, I want to say 2016, around about that time, and it was huge. And we actually got over 10,000 responses from young people across Wales. And it still stands, I'm pretty sure, as the Senedd's largest ever consultation response.
Really?
Yeah, ever. Aside from like signing petitions and things like that.
Yeah.
But in terms of consultation responses.
Yeah.
And overwhelmingly, young people said that they did want the right to vote at 16. When we did a big conference and we kind of explored the reasons why some young people might not want to, their reasoning for not wanting to vote at 16 is because they didn't understand it. Yeah. They didn't understand what they were voting for. Yeah. And this is what we always come back to, is education around rights, kind of the democracy, opportunities. Yeah. And so all of the information that we gathered, we then obviously shared with Welsh Government, because at the time we were going through the education reform, the Professor Donaldson review. And obviously then the impact and the outcome is that now in Wales we have a new curriculum, but also as part of the heart of that, there should be a lot of education around democracy. Yeah. And also Wales has now gone on to lower the voting age to 16. So I feel a very weird sense of pride and legacy in being part of that process of the consultation side of it. And and then the other massive thing was obviously the conversation around having a young person's assembly after Funky Dragon closed. That didn't go away, Lots of people felt we needed a national voice. Obviously, Children in Wales and Young Wales were providing a voice for young people to feed into Welsh Government consultation, but on a big wider scale. And the actual Funky Dragon young people, through their petition, lobbied. And after the election in 2016, we got Ellen Jones, the Llawydd, who became the kind of presiding officer, the Llawydd for the Senedd, who really believed in young people, and she backed and supported the mobilisation of the Senedd, establishing the Welsh Youth Parliament. Yeah. So I got the greatest privilege of working with the most amazing and inspiring woman called Delith Lewis, who I affectionately nicknamed Delbird. But she is the Youth Parliament manager now. And I got the great honour of working alongside her and the rest of the kind of education and youth engagement team at the Senedd. And we set about creating the Welsh Youth Parliament.
That's huge.
Yeah, it was.
Really huge. And even now to this day, it's really successful. And I see them, the young, especially when on social media, when they campaign, and I thought, how amazing and empowering that is. They're a young person, and one of which came to the National Academy of Educational Leadership's
Amazing.
Conference in Newport, in the conference centre, which was filled with head teachers and senior leads of schools and some youth work organisations as well. And he spoke so passionately about young persons and children's rights. I actually thought it was an adult speaking, how articulate this young man was, and he's going to go massively far. And what a great platform that
amazing platform. And the thing that we're really conscious about is what draws some young people to these kind of opportunities. Some people would say, oh, you're only getting a certain kind of group of young people, so high achievers, etc. We were conscious of that. So we did a lot of consultation with voluntary organisations, the statutory sector, young people as well themselves. And so the model of the Youth Parliament, which is so special, is that they have partner organisations. So as part of it, young people can nominate themselves in their constituencies and do like the democratic process of it. But also we have spaces, saying we as the Royal We, I no longer work there sadly, but the Senate support then partner organisations to apply. So these are organisations that work with young people from a variety of backgrounds. So it could be that they're young carers, it could be that they're youth justice experience, it could be that they've got a disability, a variety, homeless experience, so all of these different backgrounds. And so therefore the Youth Parliament has these voices from people who are traditionally underrepresented. I hate the phrase hard to engage, by the way. It drives me crazy. They're not hard to engage. We're just lazy at engaging with them. We won't, so we as youth workers have to own that better.
100%.
They're underrepresented for a reason. And so the mechanism there with the Youth Parliament allows for those voices to still be heard as well. So they've gone on, and so people say, why did you ever leave? And
literally, that was a question I was going to ask you, because it sounds amazing.
It was amazing. And everyone knew me already, and it is amazing. And because I'd worked at Funky Dragon for so long, and then at the Senate for so long, I'd worked all across Wales. So therefore, I was really privileged in that I got to know lots of great youth workers and different people from the sector. And so everyone was like, why would you leave such a great platform, and it genuinely was nothing more than I just felt like I needed a new challenge. Alongside working, I did my master's. So I did my master's in childhood and youth studies at Cardiff University. Always wanted to kind of push myself, I guess, professionally, and I'm not doing a PhD before anyone ever mentions it to me. I'm not academic enough. I couldn't.
You certainly could. You have the ability to, but I understand what you wouldn't want to do.
I am all of those who do. But no, I felt like it was time for a new challenge. And I think as well, working at somewhere like the Senate, I adored it. It is a fantastic organisation. It's a great employer. The benefits, the pay, the community there. I am still in touch with pretty much everyone on my team, and have really strong relationships with them. But internal promotion is difficult, and I knew that I wasn't the opportunity to progress, which I really wanted for myself. It at that time wasn't available to me, so I knew then. So I kind of, somebody just happened to mention this little organisation called Brook to me.
It's not little, it's huge, isn't it?
It's huge.
If anyone wants sex education, it's plastered over the introduction and the ending, and it's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, so a dear friend of mine, Leon Ward, who is the chief executive of what was My Bank and now is, oh my gosh, they're gonna Money Solutions. Oh my goodness, they will be so cross at me. Forget it. They only rebranded last week. So Leon was at the time deputy chair at Brook. And so we would just happen to have a catch up on a day, having a coffee, and they kind of said, would you be willing to have a chat with our chief exec? They're just super interested to learn more about the education reforms happening in Wales, because it was at the time when we were having the new curriculum, and this was 2019 for the kind of timeline context. And I said, yeah, of course. So yeah, I had a phone conversation with the chief executive of Brooke. They asked me lots of questions just about like Wales. Is there much sex education? Is there anyone doing sex education? You know, what's in the curriculum around it? So provided them with lots of answers that were where I could answer. And then things kind of evolved from there. A few months later, they got back in touch and said, oh, we really valued that conversation. Would you be interested to come to London to meet with a couple of our staff team? Just have a conversation about Wales. Again, nothing about a job. If anything, I was thinking, oh, maybe an opportunity to maybe look at becoming a trustee or something.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Again, nothing was ever about a role with them. And yeah, went to London, met with some staff there, and it was really positive. And then a couple of months later, heard back from them. They said, oh, we think the time was right. We want to expand into Wales. We feel like this is the perfect opportunity, and we would really love for you to be that person.
What
So yeah,
offered you?
well, I had to go through a recruitment process, obviously, you know. But yeah, so the rest is kind of history. So I remember going to London for the job interview, and then I remember being stood in Paddington Station and them phoning me and saying, we would love for you to come and work for us. And I remember being stood on the station going, oh my gosh, I've got an amazing job at the Senedd. It's permanent and secure and it's good wages and has good benefits. And the charity sector has asked me to go back to it, and I was made redundant from the charity sector before. What do I do? And
you're about to catch
I'm about to catch a tree. And I said yes.
How did you feel? Like, you know, like the moment you had the phone call, that must have, I bet your heart went to your stomach.
It did.
How was that? I bet you felt
It was
almost like you feel sick almost.
I did. And yeah, it was. And I just remember sat on the train home back to Port Talbot the whole time going, what have you done? What have you done? And yeah, because obviously I was going to work for an organisation that, whilst I knew who Brooke were and valued their work, Brooke had been around, were established back in 1964, you know, so been around for a long time, but never really had a presence in Wales. Yeah. Brooke has clinical services, but they've always predominantly been based in England, you know. Again, we're a devolved country. Our sexual health services are run very differently in Wales. But this was about bringing education services to Wales. This was about working with schools, youth organisations, upskilling young people around the different topics, equally upskilling professionals. But also for me, this job was a bit different. It was that it was what was classed as a business development role. So it wasn't kind of, you know, youth work in essence. I had to go out and be a salesperson. And so all of the work I've ever done through youth work has always been for free. So when I went to the Senedd, Dad, can I come and see your young people? I'll run a workshop for you for free. Whereas now with Brooke, I was going, Dad, can I come out and work with your young people? I'm going to have to charge you for it. You know, even though I know you desperately needed it, or other youth workers desperately wanted this education for their young people, it came at a cost. So I was exceptionally nervous about how on earth do we do this, or how do I go out and sell? And I remember my first year's target was £10,000, and I felt like that was £12 million. I was like, I don't know how. But people do have budgets. People do have money. And when it's services that aren't easily accessible or supportive of, they're there. And then by 2022, in that year, I'd gone on to generate £130,000 of income for Brooke in Wales that year. So people have money that's through different contracts, different professional training, different education services. So the money is there. And my time at Brooke evolved really. So I kind of went in to build, it was just me. I was a one-man band and had to go out and start, and again, utilising my connections, my youth connections, and just went out and started to spread the word, and people saw the value. And I think the thing that I was lucky about is I had a fairly good reputation for people knowing that I'm, you know, good at what I do. And so therefore we take the punt on it and be like,
trusted you as well, isn't it? They would have built the trust of you. Yes, you've gone to work for Brooke, but they know you wouldn't have, you know, snaked on your values. You still true to your values. You're not offering them something that's horrendous. You're offering them a really good product. I've worked with Brooke before, and you know, I will say they were fantastic at training some of the members of staff we had last year. Really good. I actually dropped in on one of the sessions. Number one, because they had free lunch. Number two, I just wanted to see it, because I unfortunately missed one when I was a practitioner myself, and I stayed the whole day. I wasn't meant to. I cancelled 2 meetings to stay there. I was really drawn in.
And
I thought it was fantastic.
And this is the thing, Brooke really prides itself. We're a trauma-informed organisation, so do a lot of good work around that. But also the specialism around it. You know, we talk about things like misogyny. We talk about things like pornography, things that people generally feel quite taboo or don't feel comfortable discussing. We try and do it in a really person-centred way, that actually being like, well, these issues aren't going to go away. You know, they're there.
Yeah.
Technology is advancing, so therefore we're seeing a wider online presence, which therefore brings with it some challenges.
Yeah.
So the education is important. Harmful sexual behaviours, peer-on-peer sexual harassment. And that was the thing for me, was just going out and talking about these subject areas and being passionate about it. And I was really fortunate that I got asked to represent Brooke, and actually gave formal evidence twice at the Senate. One around the relationship sexuality education code, what Welsh Government were bringing in as the education. And the second time was going in and speaking about the peer-on-peer sexual harassment inquiry and the issues that young people are facing, you know. So it's an important organisation. It does really important work. And so the time that I've spent at Brooke, alongside that, because of my background in participation and my background in youth engagement, I was asked to take on the participation remit at Brooke as well, alongside the Wales. So for about 4 years, about 3.5 years, I juggled 2 different jobs. In theory, both part-time, but practice, both full-time. But eventually then in 2023, I became the head of participation for the whole of the UK. So then became the strategic lead really for all of Brooke's work in terms of engaging young people and adults, because we're all age service. And absolutely relished and loved and just had the best time ever, really. So introduced a model of participation through the Laura Lundy model around kind of space, voice, audience and influence. So all of these things. And also worked on our youth governance. So something I'm really passionate about is more young people getting opportunities to become trustees and understanding better. So at Brooke, we developed I developed a system, and so now we've got 2 under 25-year-old trustees sitting on Brooke's Brooke board of trustees, which is amazing, as well as a participation committee which we pay young people to participate on. We've got 3 national participation advisory groups, one for 16 to 19-year-olds, one for 20 to 24-year-olds, and one for 25 pluses, as well as a parent and carers advisory group as well. So again, all of our work being informed by the service users, well, I hate that term, but the people who use it and the people who are engaged in our work to make sure that it replicates. So and we won an award from the Queen in 2022. We before she passed away, it was a Platinum Jubilee year, and we were one of the 20 organisations in the UK to be awarded the Jubilee Volunteering Award.
That's really good. That's a really prestigious award.
It was very cool. I didn't go because I'm very selfless, and let my staff and other young people go. And then they got to go. We got to a big award ceremony at one of the very fancy houses or estates in London. And then also we got to go to the Queen's garden party. Well, actually, was then the King's, because obviously the Queen passed away.
Of course,
garden party at Buckingham Palace as well. So
I was thinking just before we sort of I came in today, I watched one of your videos on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And I was
one of me or one of Brooke?
One of you.
Oh,
is you and your colleague Nick.
Oh yeah, the big RSC live.
Yeah, do you know what? Right, I was normally when people talk about RSC sort of stuff or porn or periods and all that type of stuff, people almost flinch. They get a bit nervous. Yeah. And you and Nick were very comfortable, and you can just tell it was almost like your everyday language. And I think if you were a trainer with, I don't know, potential other trainers or potential practitioners and things like that, they would have felt really comfortable with you guys.
Thank you.
But also, I think I have this debate quite regularly about sometimes we're the best as in youth workers are the best people to talk about those type of things, because I think traditionally we are probably a bit more relaxed about that type of stuff than maybe your math teacher, which, to be fair, and credit to all teachers, that probably was never part of his job description.
They don't want to teach it. They don't want to teach it. And I've spoken to many a teacher about it. And they have to now. Welsh Government, we've got statutory guidance. They've got to provide this education. But again, the thing that we're really failing at is training. We're not providing training for teachers. There's money there, but there's not money for supply teachers to allow for teachers to go to attend training sessions. So there's lots of barriers and issues that need to be addressed and kind of solutions to be figured out. But ultimately, yeah, standing up in front of a group of 15-year-olds and talking about pornography is not what some people have signed up to do. Whereas for me, back in the days when I worked, as I mentioned earlier, the relationship advice drop-in service in East Talbot Youth Service with Corin Fry, I used to run contraception sessions. So we used to give out free kind of condoms and sexual health information to young people. And I think that education for me helped me. I don't flinch about when I talk about sex and relationships. That's me personally. And so I remember walking through the town centre with my nan, and I remember a young person with their friends going, "Oh, there's the condom lady." And I was mortified. And my nan, what, you know. And also there was another time where I took my car for an MOT, and RADS workers would always have these big black bags, hold-all bags, and they would be full of things like condoms, lubricant, dental dams, handed out information, condom demonstrators, okay, so the whole shebang. And it was in the boot of my car, and my zip was broken on mine. So mine was always open, you know, whatever. And so as part of the MOT, I'm guessing, you know, from my memory, they had to check the spare tire or something. And I came back, and the mechanic was like, "Oh, I had to go into the boot of your car, and a bag was in there and fell over, and a load of condoms came out." And I was just like, "Oh." And then there's really awkward silence, and then just him going, "So what is it that you do?" Like, and I just remember and then explaining to him. But those things got me through the mortification of being unable to. And so, yeah, those kind of things don't faze me. However, I do appreciate that it's not a job for everyone. And when the pandemic happened and we were all home working, we obviously transitioned to digital training. My husband also was home working, and he was working upstairs, and he would come downstairs through the living room to go to the bathroom. And he would hear me saying vulva and vagina and all of these different terminations, and playing what we call the A to Z of sex and pornography. Because again, we try to do things that make people laugh and feel relaxed because you want to take the nervousness away. And I just remember him at the end of the day going, what is your job again? Like, what is your job? You know, because again, when people hear what I would do on a day-to-day basis. But I'm really proud of the work that we've done in Wales as well. Obviously, you know, built from nothing to the point now where we're providing training. We've got contracts. We do a lot of period dignity work with different local authorities in Wales as well. And also our harmful sexual behaviours, a traffic light tool as well. It's been licensed out as well to different local authorities and children's services. So the expansion of Brooke in Wales has been fantastic. I would love to see a sexual health clinic in Wales one day. Fantastic. That would be amazing. Obviously, again, I've mentioned
needed as well.
It is. We can get sexual health services through the hospital boards. They do amazing work, the teams, they really do. However, some of them, not all of them, are still a bit rigid in terms of like when their opening hours are. They're all age services. So young people tell me, I'm not going there in case I bump into someone down the street or my auntie or, you know, whomever. We've still got a long way to go in terms of making sexual health services accessible, geography wise. You know, some young people have to get like 2 buses or a train to get somewhere. How can they afford that? Most of the sexual health clinics sometimes are open during between 9 and 3, where most of our young people school. So there's a lot of stuff. We've still got a long way to go. And what we do have, unfortunately, which makes it more time pressing, is we have a rising rate of sexually transmitted infections amongst the 15 to 24 according to the last stats from Public Health Wales. So it's imperative that we're providing services. There are services as well through Sexual Health Wales that provide home testing services and kits for people over the age of 16, which is amazing. They are completely, they come out to you, apply online for one, and they get sent to you in the post, completely clear, like plain packaging, so no one would ever know, with information about how to test yourself for sexually transmitted infections. You pop all that back in the post for free, and then they'll be in touch once they've processed it. If you did have a sexually transmitted infection, they'll advise you where to go and get the right support and treatment. And again, it's services like that are amazing and revolutionary, but we need that on a wider scale. We need more young people to know that these services exist. Obviously, it is only for over 16s. There is, an issue around kind of those under the age. around safeguarding and all of that stuff. So there's a huge area of work to be done around sexual health in Wales. There's lots of great people trying to do lots of great work on the ground. But yes, I would love to see something of a bespoke. And again, different health boards will have a young person's service. But again, I'm biased and think the way that Brooke runs our services specifically for young people is very special and very unique, because we all know as youth workers, working with young people is very different to working with adults.
100%, yeah. And I think it requires sometimes almost like a different skill sometimes.
Definitely.
You know, it's
1,000%.
Yeah. So, yeah, I feel as if we talked about it a lot, and your journey is just like it's immense and huge. But obviously now, the present day, what's the situation now? Present day
for me, as of it's very unfortunate, but I was actually made redundant from Brooke. The charity sector is facing massively challenging times. Underfunded, under-resourced. It's national insurance contributions. There's lots of reasons and rationale, and those who work in the charity sector will fully understand them. And unfortunately, Brooke had to make some really tough decisions to keep itself financially viable or open. So unfortunately, my position was made redundant. So for me, obviously youth work is my passion, it's my heart, because alongside it I was on the Children's Commissioner for Wales Adult Advisory Panel for 6 years. I chaired it for 3 years. I've got such a passion around children's rights participation, so I'm hoping that
you're on the board.
I was on the youth work implementation strategy. There we go. I always get them the wrong way around.
As well, to be
fair, I'm bored for a year. I had to leave, unfortunately, after a year due to some personal circumstances, but firmly believe in the work that they're doing, and also under the guidance of the phenomenal Sharon Lovell. Cannot go without actually saying the impact that Sharon has made on me as well. She is a fantastic mentor to me and just superb, like
a great person.
Oh God, someone I definitely aspire to and adore. So hopefully kind of utilising that, my connections and the work that I've done around Wales for the last 24 years will come back to me in some way. So youth work matters, Wales matters, and I'll always be passionate around that work. So redundancies happen, but life goes on. I'm 40, and so I'm trying to give it a very positive spin, but I also am a bit heartbroken because it's very sad, leaving an organisation that you so passionately believe in, but obviously Brooke is fantastic. Go forth. Brooke's website, brooke.org.uk, has got so many great resources. So there's no hard feelings to Brooke whatsoever. There really isn't. And just kind of I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, even if you don't know what that reason is at the time.
Yeah, and it's a really sensible way of looking. If I was in your position, I don't think I'd be as positive as you. So you're handling it really, really well. And I don't think you've heard the last of Kelly Harrison.
I hope not. I hope not. If anyone wants to give me a job, hit me up, LinkedIn.
Yeah, if you're listening, reach out to Kelly.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, you are a master of quite a few. But I asked this question to everyone, but the first one I'll ask you is, there's two questions I asked. Mm-hmm. What are you excited about in the future? What you most looking forward to? And the other one is, what fills you with dread? So we start with the dread one. What's the one you're a bit more nervous about? You think, well, actually, we need to look at that a little bit more. What scares you about the future a little bit?
The biggest thing that scares me is that in all of the years of devolution, we still haven't figured out child poverty. So for me, that's the thing I always hammer on about, is we've still got a long way to go with our political legislators around solving, funding services provided to be able to address the real gaps that we talk about and the real impact of child poverty on young people in Wales. So for me, that still fills me with dread. The other thing that fills me with dread is the ever evolving and changing face of politics, and with the potential of different parties who obviously are very much entitled to have their ideologies and their beliefs, but some of them I do believe are quite harmful and damaging. Just for Brooke as an organisation, the conversations we're hearing from Reform around abortion rights is really concerning, to think that in 2025 abortion rights are still up for debate, so that does trouble me and worry me is about people not understanding the brilliance of Wales, but also how our Welsh communities work, you know. So I'm from Talbot steel industry, very much been attacked and damaged in the last kind of 5 to 10 years. Having a huge impact on the community that I love and adore. But yeah, so there's those things. So political and instability, I think, makes me a bit nervous, but child poverty for sure. But
100%.
the thing that gives me hope is just the amazing young people that I work with.
Yeah.
So the young people that, like, I worked with the Funky Dragons, some of them have gone on, they've all gone on to obviously like do jobs and different things, but some of them are in our youth sectors in Wales. So shout out to the wonderful Alex Atkins, who is the participation manager for Foster and Network Wales.
Yeah.
So I met Alex when she was 14 and she is turning 30 this month.
Wow.
And I'm actually going to her birthday meet and I've stayed in contact with her and all of these things. So it's the fact that the young people that we see from the Welsh Youth Parliament, from the first cohort, the work they've gone on to do, some of the young people we've kind of come across and have become youth workers themselves, that for me is the hope and the inspiration that we've still got these young people who feel inspired enough to make a change in their communities and are going on to do tremendous things. So for me, it's like, it feels like legacy in that way. So I had that from my youth workers and here I am in the youth sector and going on and seeing other young people be inspirational is amazing.
If that was a university style question, that would receive very high marks. So that's a very, very good answer to quite a complex question.
I'll take a PhD on the way out.
Yeah, 100%. You can get your certificate and go with it. That was really good. Look, Kelly, you've been amazing.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming up and telling us your rich sort of background and, you know, everything you've been through, you know, your career, your home life is really inspiring, a lot of the stuff, and the sheer volume of stuff that you've done is incredible. So you're an absolute, you know, asset to the sector, and we hope you sort of stick around because we need people like you, 100%, you know, and yeah.
You're very kind, and I'll give that straight back to you as well, you know, in the sense of the work that you do. But no, it's a great honour. And people often say youth work isn't supposed to be about us and our journeys, you know. So I'm really honoured to have been asked to come in and share my story, you know, because it is one that was hard, but I am deeply proud of it. And I am deeply thankful for youth work. And it is cliche, and I said it earlier, but I do credit youth work with saving my life, and I love it. I believe in it. And I just hope that we continue to have powers of be that believe in the value.
Yeah, and that's a really good thing to end on. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to This Is Youth Work. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to receive notifications on future episodes. If you like what you're hearing, don't forget to press the like button.